Hi, I'm Saskia, a medical student from the University of Glasgow, and I'm currently in South Africa on my senior elective, and I just want to talk about what's happened during my first week. So, it was essentially a week of orientation and introduction to wilderness medicine and cognitive psychology, which is essentially looking at how the mind functions, learns, and makes decisions. Apart from the fact that it's an incredibly interesting field of research, it's also really important in terms of helping you become aware of the reasons you make mistakes, and therefore how you can better avoid them. For me right now, this is about reducing medical error in my work as a medical student and in the future as a doctor. So, I arrived in Johannesburg Airport late on Monday night after huge delays to my flights and took a train to a lovely rental flat for the night, where after 2 weeks of travelling and a whole weekend spent in airports, I had to hand wash all of my underwear and then quickly hair dry it so I had dry clothes for the trip we were about to take. Early the next morning, my supervisor and another member of his team picked me up and we drove north to Botswana, which was about a 7 hour drive. At one point, my supervisor took a wrong turn, and when he noticed, he wondered out loud why, and went through all of the contributing factors that caused him to take the wrong turn. Weirdly, this helped me realise I'd found a great doctor to learn from, one that wasn't going to shy away from mistakes, and instead try hard to learn from them. I had met my supervisor at the World Extreme Medicine Conference last year, where he gave a fascinating talk on medicine in the bush, when you have very little equipment, little communication with the outside world, and it might take 8 hours to evacuate someone to a hospital, and there are dangerous animals all around you. How do you make the right decisions? How do you do the best thing for your patients with the circumstances that you're in? So we drove to the Mashati Game Reserve, where there had been a serious incident the previous week involving an elephant, and my supervisor had been the doctor on the other end of the phone for 6 hours to ensure those that were injured would survive. That's telemedicine, where consultations happen over the phone, over the computer, or through video communications. It's a vital form of medical practice because in many places across the world, patients do not live near hospitals, and they certainly don't fall ill or injured near a hospital, but these people still need treatment and advice. In the city in the UK, if you ring an ambulance, you can expect it to arrive within about half an hour, not out in the bush. It may not be arriving for about a whole day. The game reserve was absolutely stunning, and there were impala, these cute antelope, wandering around outside our rooms. On day 2, a guide took us out on 2 safari drives, one at sunrise and one at sunset. We saw elephants, giraffes, cheetah, all sorts of eagle, vultures, hyena, ostriches, warthog. It was amazing. And there were these amazing birds, yellow-billed hornbills, which are a relation of the red-billed hornbill, which is what Zazu is from The Lion King. So I became very aware of the patience needed in the wild, both for predators to stalk their prey and for us to catch sight of this. Normal city life keeps us running about and expecting instant gratification through media consumption and the way we work and travel. It was great to be able to just pause, but also testing. I enjoy the slow life back home at times, but I found myself getting impatient waiting for the leopard mum to catch the impala in front of her. The impala eventually got away. I felt it was important for me to become aware of my impatience and gain control to dampen it down and just enjoy the present moment. In between the drives, my supervisor got some of the staff members together and trained them in life-saving skills, basically how to stop bleeding and maintain breathing. These guys were able to play with and test the first aid kits they needed in order to use these skills, and the session was very helpful, as it was succinct and simple. I was learning essentially the same stuff as I have done in many first aid courses previously, but my supervisor is a very good teacher. He was explaining things in a new way, and it just made sense. And of course, it's slightly different out here, again because of the extremely slow response times in being able to get to a hospital or ambulance. The next day, I was dropped off in another area of Mashatu in a makeshift campsite, where the Tour de Tuli was to start the next morning, which is a 4-day cycle tour, and it had about 300 cyclists, averaging about 60 kilometres per day. The event exists to fundraise for Children of the Wilderness, a charity that enables sustainable conservation through education of rural children in 5 African countries, and teaches them leadership skills in eco-clubs. The charity exposes children to their natural heritage and inspires them to protect their environment in the future. I was one of the medics for the event, along with an emergency and paediatric doctor, an anaesthetist and trauma nurse, and it was a fantastic fun. One morning, I had to chase a baboon out of the medical tent after I found him opening a box of bandages. These things just don't happen in the UK. And the border crossing between Botswana, Zimbabwe, and South Africa involved getting our passports stamped and visas sorted by border control officials who were sat under trees at tables with Coke cans and sandwiches. I was taken from Zimbabwe to South Africa by helicopter, which was awesome, and we crossed over the enormous Shashi River, which is currently dry because it's winter. We saw crocodiles in a tiny bit of water that was left in the dried up Mtlusi River, and it was we just saw the most incredible sunrises and sunsets, getting up between about 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. almost every day to pack up our belongings and get on the road, and sitting up on the high rocks to watch the sun go down. I saw what incredible things Land Rovers can do. African wilderness is exactly what they're built for, driving almost directly up and down rocky mountains, crossing rivers and driving through quicksand. I love the One Life, Live It sign that's on the back of all the 4x4s. The fitness of the cyclists was incredible, even amongst those who have had life-changing illnesses, and I definitely want to advise future patients who want to get healthier to get on the mountain bike. It was the first year they've ever had no broken bones, so the cyclists were very lucky, and although I didn't treat any serious injuries, I learned ever so much about planning for different scenarios out in the wild, having to bring everything you could possibly need with you, including clothing, food, water and fuel, and how to deal with different problems and people. The trauma nurse there called it the University of Life, which it really was. The tour took the idea of leaving no trace seriously. I learnt to dig holes in the ground, which you needed when you need the loo during the daytime, and to burn toilet roll with matches. The environmental respect was so refreshing. I learned of the legend of the baobab, which upset the gods when the earth was young, and the gods became angry and uprooted the tree, thrusting it back into the ground upside down. And how to spot animals at night in the darkness by swinging a torch across the horizon until you get a reflection of the eyes. We drank from the clear CZ spring in Zimbabwe, a spring that has never been dry, a natural wonder, and I gained an important understanding of situational awareness, which is the perception of environmental elements in events in time or space, and the comprehension of their meaning. It's vital for good decision-making and avoidance of error, and rural Africa was the perfect place to become aware of my awareness, what I knew and what I didn't know, what I had to look out for, such as elephants. You always have to keep an eye out for elephants. So the experience was absolutely vital in helping me become a better doctor in the future and reducing the number of mistakes I might make and mitigating risk. People, including doctors, are always going to make mistakes. It's human. But by starting to understand why, I can start to preempt such events and hopefully avoid them. I feel totally inspired by these 3 countries and already know that I'll come back out here one day to work again. As Alan Alda says, you have to leave the city in your comfort and go into the wilderness of your intuition. What you'll discover will be wonderful. What you'll discover is yourself.